Monday, October the 19th, 5 o'clock. I'm going to call the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation to order. First order of business is to check to see if we have a quorum. So Connie Schrader.
Here.
Charles Washington.
Here.
Kevin Plunkett. Oh, I see. He has just arrived. Don't see his face yet, but he has arrived. Good. Ron Spencer.
Here. Here we go.
Sam here. We don't think Sam's going to make it, and Bill Gossett and myself. So we do have a quorum. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
First things first, Angela, we're going to come to you to see if we have any public comments.
We do not.
Okay, thanks. Jumping right in, 3.1, approval of meeting minutes from the Bastrop EDC board meeting of September 21st, 2020.
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously. All those opposed, I guess we don't need that since it's unanimous. 3.2. Has Jimmy jumped on?
No, I'm going to do the update.
Okay, then go ahead and take it away. 3.2 update on 921 Main project by project manager Jimmy Crouch, also known as Cameron, this evening.
Yes, Jimmy gave me the authority to speak on behalf of the EDC.
Good.
That was my third joke. I'm done for the night. All right. So, thank you, Mayor. 921 is going to be completed November 8th or 9th. We're trying to figure that out. The elevator company was having delays due to COVID, and they said they could meet our deadline for $8,000 more, and we don't need it. It's a superfluous deadline at this point. So AI needs additional time to put in their low voltage IT wires and everything else. And so they would like to have the additional week to 2 weeks with Sabre in there to finish that with the construction crew. So it works out well for everybody. And Sabre needs additional time as well. And so we're going to have the completion date November 8th or 9th. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Mayor.
I thought I read an update from Jimmy that they are putting the elevator in this week.
That's correct. Yes, but so we can't meet the deadline by Saturday. It was supposed to have been beginning of the month.
But they ended, like, they wanted money and we said no, and then they ended up doing it early anyway.
Well, kind of, yes. Not early, but not as late as they originally said it would have been. That is correct. And so the drywall is pretty much complete. We have to wait for the low voltage wiring. That's part of this agreed delay between everybody. Is we don't want to put in all of the drywall until we're finished running all the wires. So that way we don't have to punch holes or anything. And so that's why we're doing this coordinated effort to the finish line to carry this 921 baton across together. So that will be November 8th or 9th. And so that means at our next meeting, we will have champagne to open to celebrate, which I'll get to on the back end of my update for our November meeting. But so our November 16th meeting, we should be completed. Everybody should be moved in. AI should be starting to move their furniture in, and we'll also be presenting at that meeting, part of this update, the lease for AI and their move-in date and how we're going to coordinate all of that once we have the next 2 to 3 weeks finalized. So that will be at the November meeting as well.
Okay.
Any questions?
Of course, we never expect unexpected things, but you don't anticipate any surprises at this point, correct?
Not anymore. No. I think I'm not going to jinx myself. I'm not going to I'm not going to say anymore.
Okay. I'm going to mark my calendar. November 8th or 9th. I'll
With
put
a
red
quality
check
number
on
2
the
pencil.
tree. What's that?
With a quality number 2 pencil.
Oh, you don't want it etched in stone. Is that what you're saying?
No, it should be good. It looks like we'll be good.
Okay, that's good to hear. Anybody have any questions for Jimmy on that one? Okay. So,
Just one question is, for Jimmy is, how are they doing with respect to injuries or incidents on site? If they continue to keep us updated on things like that, because those are the things that pop into, let's say, all kind of news events and whatever, especially if you had a severe injury. So, yeah, I'd like Jimmy to be updating us on first aids, injuries, and so forth.
You bet. And if you'd like, Bill, you're welcome to have direct discussions with Jimmy. I'll put you in touch with him and give you his cell phone number.
Yeah, it's not so much me. It's you turn around and you drop a guy from 2 stories up and splatter his skull on the sidewalk. That's going to be a big issue for all of us. And that's what we need to be prepared for is, what happens when those things come about, a severed arm, whatever happens in those things, as a board, they're going to be looking at us. The police will be looking at him. But from a community point of view, that becomes one of our worst nightmares in terms of PR and managing a situation like that. So that's why I'd like him to be aware of that, to be keeping us informed so that we turn around and don't get questions, say, no, nothing's ever happened at that site. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's 4 first aids, there's 2 injuries and so forth. So again, it's just for a major project. That's the type of stuff we want to keep in mind for even future projects. This one's been going well, but I'm more concerned about when it doesn't go well, that we're not in a crisis mode because we're uninformed.
You bet.
Okay.
And 2 things. 1, what you described, none of that's happened, fortunately. And 2, hopefully we won't be doing projects like this much in the future. So we got a couple more weeks to go.
Yep. But anything on the industrial park, anything on the future, those are the type of things just to, finance, timeline, and safety. Those are the key 3 parameters to be always reporting every time.
I'm sure Jimmy can include that in his wrap report when he does that too. So we can just make a note to remind him to do that for us.
That'd be great.
Okay, so there's a lot of meat in the middle of this agenda. So I'd love to go to 3.6 before we go to the middle of the agenda. Would that be okay with you, Cameron? You can tee up the slide.
Yes, you bet. You are the chair. Go for it.
I'm going for it. 3.6, CEO updates on BEDC website, analytics, COVID-19 grant update, workforce development update, and CEO and team presentations for the month.
Thank you. So first and foremost, I want to talk about our November meeting. Will be our last virtual meeting, and then we're going to go to live meetings in January tentatively, and the tentative plan will be to have a meeting at our mayor's house as a retreat, and do our annual retreat, since our last one was quite productive and led to what we're about to discuss after this segment, which is all the amendments to our various governing documents and our restrictive covenants. I'd like to do that again. I think that was beneficial. And we now have, as of this week, end of last week, the Tesla report, and I'd like to make that the focal point of that retreat and how we can strategize as an EDC to capitalize on that, because a lot of that information we paid a lot of money for, and so we're not going to make all of that public. And I mean, it's publicly available if anybody requests it, but I want us to have a strategy plan as us collectively as a team at our retreat, so that way we can then implement that plan with everyone. And that's open to the public as well. But just so everybody knows, we're not going to be putting the Tesla study on our website. But if anybody wants a copy of it, they can certainly come by and meet with us and ask me for a copy. So that being said, I want to thank the mayor for graciously opening up her house to us for that. And we'll talk more about that in November as the time comes to make sure that that's going to be still a safe thing to do. I don't want us to start planning things yet until we get closer to that point. So that being said, our website analytics, this is really cool. So now we're into our second quarter of our new website. And as I stated in our last meeting, we were averaging last year about 200 to 300 hits, new users per month. And now we have increased that to about 400 to 500 users in our first quarter with our new web hosting company. And then in our third quarter, we're now up to almost 1,000 users per month. And that's in Q2 or Q3, our second quarter with the company, because we started using them, just so Charles and Bill know, we started using them in Q2. So this is our second quarter with them, and those numbers are for Q3. Sorry for any confusion there. And we have some good analytics in those reports. We're getting a high average time per user. For people that don't know, anytime we get over a minute per user, that's good. And we're up to a minute 26 and over a page per person. So they're bouncing around per page. And not just that, but our targeted users, which we're able to look at the target industries that are coming to our website, and they're averaging over 2. So they're looking at our site selection, and they're looking at our homepage. They're looking at our About, Bastrop, and various other pages and links. So that's great. And so we're able to capture that. And like I said last time, Jean is loving this. It's added a whole new dynamic to her projects and how she's handling them. And she's doing extremely well. And she's loving this. So any questions about our website before I move forward? Cool. All right. So COVID grant update. It doesn't look like we're going to need a 4th round. We have the money set aside, but it looks like everybody's bouncing back. Kevin, you're one of our local business owners and restaurant owners and one of our grant recipients. Can you opine as to your thoughts on a 4th round and whether or not local businesses and yourself, how you guys are doing?
Yeah, speaking for myself, we're pretty well back to normal, knock on wood. We're just about back to where we were this time last year. So I'm excited about that. And and of course, very appreciative of the EDC for, everything we did, to help through this. It's hard to say. I haven't heard of any industries that are still, I'm sure the movie theater and places like that are still hurting. But yeah, as far as, the restaurants go, as far as I know, everybody's back to cooking with gas again.
Oh, that's great to hear. That is great.
Excellent.
To hear.
And like we presented at the our EDC presented at the Texas Economic Development Corporation's annual meeting last week, and it seems not just us but statewide, everybody seems to be bouncing back September, October, which is good to see. That we're not just an anomaly, that we're part of a larger movement, which makes me more confident that we won't need to do this again, and we can hopefully economically start putting this behind us and moving forward. So thank you. And just so the public knows, Kevin is a board member. Kevin did receive grants, but Kevin did abstain from and refrain from taking part in any of those meetings and any of that process related to those grants. So the public knows. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. That being said, yes, we presented last week, and it was fun getting to present our grant and how we did our grant process to people participating at our statewide conference for economic development organizations. The mayor and Angela in our office all joined together on Monday, and it was fun. I did a little roundtable and a Q&A afterwards, and it was a good experience. Being my first year on this and doing this, getting to take part in that was a cool experience. I felt very fortunate to be a part of that group. and to be a part of so many other great organizations that were helping out their local businesses. That being said, Project Gummy Bears was approved at the second reading last week. So we started this week funding the first phase of that. And last week we also met with everybody from the city's permitting department to figure out what all is going to be needed at those 3 locations for permits and construction-wise. Each of those 3 locations have unique existing uses and unique new uses. And anytime you change the use, it presents unique changes to the building sometimes. And so that's what we're working out. We're not a part of this process. I will not be providing construction updates on this. I'll just be providing project updates on this. And that's the project update for that project. I'm going to be changing the name now that it's an official project. I'll be taking nominations from the board or the public. If anybody wants to think of a clever project name for this. Our mayor's usually really good at those. I see her wheels are turning already. I expect some good nominations. Lastly, we've done a number of good meetings with developers here in the last couple of weeks. The mayor was a part of one with our project manager. I was actually in the other room on Gummy Bears when she was in the next room with that project, and teams from the county and the city on a good opportunity in there. And we're also looking at a number of other projects, 2 specifically out of Opportunity Austin, that has caused us to put a hold on some other projects that we're working on as well because of the nature of one of these projects. And I'll fill you guys in. This is the end of my discussion for this item. I'll fill you guys in on all of that next week. So this week, so the public knows and you guys know, is all open session. We shouldn't, I don't foresee any executive session at this meeting. But at the next meeting, we have a lot of projects to discuss, as well as my evaluation, which is inherently an executive session. So that way the public knows next week, and so you know next week, next month.
Good one, Kevin. That's good.
We'll be an What's that?
Kevin's already submitted his name.
So we'll be in executive session primarily most of next month, just so you guys know. We have a lot of things to talk about on projects, etc. And then my evaluation will take at least 4 hours. So
Yeah, if not more. Madam Chair, Cameron, you've said next week a couple of times. It's
right.
Not next week. You mean next meeting, which is next month, which is in November, right?
That is correct. November 16th meeting. For every time I said next week, it's November 16th meeting.
And
Sorry,
that's the one that's going to have a whole bunch of executive session.
Yes, correct. That's correct, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Cameron. And as he mentioned, it's his annual review, so we'll be going into executive session. I'd just like to remind anybody that wants to fill out the survey on the Survey Monkey to please do so I can get the analytics from that and provide those to the executive committee, and then we'll be presenting those into the executive session. And then Cameron, you're working on a nice document because you've had quite a year, correct? Yeah.
Lots happened in 12 months. It seems like 2 or 3 years.
I know. If you could get that to me ahead of time, if you wouldn't mind, maybe 10 days before the executive meeting, can that happen?
Yes, I'm actually working on.
Yeah. Okay.
Working on something.
Perfect. All right. So we have the bulk of the information in the agenda that is around
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Before we leave 3.6, Cameron, there was some money that was going to be sent to the project on Project Gummy Bears. Has any of that money been sent? Where do we stand on them closing on some of the deals. I know some of them were waiting on CEOs, but there was a chunk of money that was going to go pretty quick, and I just wanted an update on if it had gone.
Yes, that's I don't have that update on when those are closing. It's supposed to be closing. I'm supposed to know that in the next 24 hours.
Okay.
But there's all the deadlines are in place and we're triggered once City Council approved the second reading.
Okay.
So that triggers a series of deadlines. The first deadline is the first payment, and them closing on 402 and Chestnut and Water Street. All of those are happening in the next week.
Okay. It's such a great project. It got such a great response when it was in the paper. I would just, if we do, maybe at the next meeting, if we can say like of the Project Gummy Bears, this many or this much of it's done, this much, here's kind of what the schedule looks like. Just a little bit more of an update, because Gummy Bears is what was on both of the city council agendas, and people have been wondering what Gummy Bears was. And since it's a pretty good hunk of money, I would just like us to be able to report to the public that we are making progress on the project.
Yeah, and that's why I want a new name too, like something involving career technology training and certifications along those lines.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
thank you. I
yes,
didn't mean to interrupt. People are going to be asking, and I just wondered if we paid any money out.
Not yet. No, we have not paid any money out yet.
All right. So like I said, the 3.3, 3.4, and 3.5 are a lot to digest, especially getting it on Friday. I know I didn't tackle it until yesterday. I ran them all off. I made a few notes. I don't feel like I have mastered them yet or even have all of my questions yet. As typical, I was real strong in the beginning. Whichever one came third, I wasn't paying as much close attention to it. I was more familiar also with policies than I was the industrial part. So I know we want to review all of these. Is there any, I'm not sure that we'll vote on them. We may vote on one of them. If we get it through, we may need more time to digest, go home, think about what you've said, update our notes, come up back with any questions. But is there any one of these that's time sensitive, Cameron? So
Nope.
November, we could do it, even though we feel like we have a pretty busy schedule in November. I would say that your 4-hour review could be cut down to no more than 40 minutes, and that would be a stretch. So we probably have some room on the back side of that. Even though you've had a wonderful year, we probably can condense that meeting. So I know that for those of you that haven't been here, there's a document that's new, but it's also a lot of repetitive for one of the other documents. I think it's fairly simple to get through in terms of your policies and procedures. Would I be out of line in suggesting that we might look at that first? Or do you think the implications on the policies and procedures are something we should follow after we've tackled them in the bylaws?
I think the first thing I think would be the restrictive covenants in our industrial park would probably be the easiest to tackle, and then do the bylaws. As far as the procedures I think you have to do the bylaws first, because those are the foundation of the policies and procedures. So
yeah, there's a lot of repeat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see, this one is 3.5. Consideration and discussion on the 7th amended protective covenants of the Bastrop Business and Industrial Park. In your packet, it is page 32. I'm going to pull up my copy that you actually made the corrections on. I think it's easier for me to follow along like that. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Cameron. You're the expert on this, and I just encourage anyone to stop and ask questions if something's unclear, to highlight something that we might want to go back and look at after we've finished it. But I think we have to have a clear understanding is where I'm going with this. And I know I personally don't feel like I've captured everything in this that I need to, but that's what Cameron's here for, to highlight all of this.
So on the covenants and the restrictions, thank you, Chair. The first 2 pages are just clerical changes to the reference to the 6th change and the 7th Amendment. We don't get anything substantive until the 3rd page under the definitions where.
Sorry, before you go on, how do you want to address changes as we've gone through this now? But you said the first 2 pages, and there's things that need to be corrected on the first 2 pages. So
Okay,
are we going page by page, or how do we go about this?
So let me ask you a question. So are you saying you see something that needs a change on the first page?
Page 2.
Page 2. Okay, where at?
First whereas, second line, it says, now wishes to amend the 5th Amendment. Actually, I think we're amending the 6th Amendment.
You are correct. Yes, sir.
And so I'm good for page 2.
Excellent.
Nice catch.
Yeah, that's happened when you got a ruptured Achilles and you got nothing to do but sit in a cast for a while.
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's all right. It's getting fixed.
Good eye.
Anyone else?
No, I gotta go get my charger. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm just glad Mr. Gossip's carrying the water on this one. Keep it up. Keep it up.
Yeah, Mayor had us last month. Bill's got us this month. All right. So on page 3, I had it's not a substantive change, it's more of a clarification. Because in here it references throughout BEDC and board as authorities to do something. So I just clarified that in the definitions that any reference to that is an act of the EDC and the board collectively as an organization.
Okay. Definitions A, number 3, boundary property line. Looks like a copy paste from somewhere else, but it is not related to noise source alone. So the second line refers to this dedicated open space from the noise source when such open space exists between the property. I don't believe boundary property lines are related to noise space.
Dedicated open space from the. That is weird.
I think from open space from the noise source when such should be probably deleted, and it just goes from permanently dedicated open space. Property lines, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm going to just do a whole different definition for that, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I'll come back next month with a very good, succinct definition on that.
Okay. Because noise doesn't respect property line. That's why it's more physical than sonic.
Correct.
Okay.
Isn't it just the common line between 2 parcels of property?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a better technical definition I'll put in there.
Mm-hmm.
Use that law degree, Cameron. Use that law degree.
I will.
Yeah, that's 2 for 2, Bill.
All right, Bill.
I'm good.
Page 4. Anything?
No.
Page 5.
On these 2 pages that are totally clean. Did anything catch your eye that y'all even discussed that maybe we need to think about that? Or it was pretty smooth sailing? Pretty standard?
Yeah, I didn't see any trouble with any of it.
Mhm. I do want to say it's definitely helpful to see the edited version with the strikeouts and stuff. That's a big help to know the deltas. Although some of the things we're finding are from the previous ones, but that was a big help.
Huge.
That's why we're doing this. We want as many eyes and as many changes as possible. Make it the clean as possible. All right, so I'm on page 7 if there's no changes on 6. And on page 7, I removed the definition of sign because it's actually defined below where we talk about the sign ordinance, and the city has, it doesn't matter what we define a sign. The city has their own definitions under their own ordinance that we're bound to, so we just incorporate their definition. Therefore, if that should change, then our definition changes with theirs. We don't have to do anything about that. And then, so I removed that, and then I also needed to add a definition for site plan because that's mentioned in here, and I wanted it to be more defined. And so this was the definition that I put in based upon both the city ordinance and kind of how our industrial park is as well.
And site plan needs bold and then spacing, structural spacing between 29 and 30 and extra space between 30 and 31, minor.
Yeah, I was trying to do that and it wouldn't do
Right.
that.
I know.
Angela will do that one for us. She's my wizard on that. Yes.
Cameron, since you're going to be cleaning it up anyway, I would have it say water drainage plan, drainage facilities, and then lighting plan. Because really, any detention pond or anything is related to the drainage plan.
Okay, just switch those around.
Yeah.
Got it.
I put like group light trails and lighting. I put all the lighting stuff together, but just on stormwater and honestly, I would call it stormwater drainage plan. That kind of makes it cleaner. You don't get into, oh, I thought you were talking about where the water lines are. It's picky stuff, but if we're rewriting it anyway.
You got it. All right, I made those changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Page 8. So the city doesn't have zones anymore. We're an employment center, so I'm going to have to make that change. That's why that's highlighted.
Yeah.
It's going to be an employment center.
Yeah, on page 8 there is on the variance, number 37. Well, that is page 8, right?
37. That's 37's vibration. Variance is on the bottom of page 7.
Let me see.
I got variance on the top of 8.
Yeah, I've got variance on the top of 8.
Well, I must have printed out a bad one then. Keep going.
Well, you may have printed out the cleaned up one, and this is the marked up one. So on the so anyway, item 37 on variance. Would the board retain approval powers for this, or would that go through P and Z?
So that's
variances.
So that's for a variance of these restrictions. Because in here it mentions throughout here a variance of these restrictions, and so the EDC board approves a variance of these restrictions.
Okay, so would we want? I'm curious. Do we want that, or would we keep it through? Like, let's say we've sold it all out, and in the future at some point we don't own any more of this land. Would we want to maintain that, or would we want to pass it off, or would we want to wait until then?
If we didn't own the land anymore, we wouldn't have these covenants, right?
Mhm.
I mean, whoever would purchase the property next would probably want their own, right?
Correct, but the EDC board still oversees them and is in charge of enforcing them in perpetuity. We just can't change them unilaterally once we lose 51% ownership.
Mhm.
Okay, so you're comfortable with how this paragraph reads? I'm okay if you're okay. I just wanted to point it out.
Isn't it similar to a homeowners association that the developer kind of controls the restrictions, but after the lots are sold, you can't have, the 5 lot owners can't say, okay, now everybody's going to have a pink and purple house.
Correct.
Right. Well, so since I haven't read the entirety, does it specify 51% ownership somewhere in here?
Yes.
We passed that page. It's on the first paragraph of the first page.
I guess I skipped right over it. All right.
Right to the meat of it, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So let me kind of add on to Kevin's question a little bit here. So after 51%, we still own pieces of it, so we still want to have the say-so in the variances. But Kevin, is your question, when all of it sells, should that still be in there, or is it when we still have some ownership of the property?
Mainly, I just wanted to bring it up in case we want to define what that might be. If there's a point at which we want to back out of it and not be involved in variances at some point. And if so, would this be the appropriate place, time to define that?
So practically speaking, how this would play out practically is we develop lots track by track by track. And once we no longer have over 50% of those, then the EDC board can still enforce and make decisions over the variances, but we can't change the restrictions. Only a majority of the property owners can change the restrictions. And a majority of the property owners could also change that provision as well if they wanted to down the road. But right now, that's not the case. And the reason for that is because we want to have uniformity throughout here and have the board have uniformity throughout our park as long as possible, even when we don't own the property, such as a property that's there that's vacant that we don't own currently, but we still have say-so by virtue of these restrictions.
And it should help with
So the appropriate time would.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry about
I was just saying that it should hold consistency and maintain value for the first buyers that were in the agreement, that this isn't flipped every time, it shifts a little bit on terms of that ownership.
Good point.
Right. So if we leave it like this, it stays until enough property owners can vote it differently. That's fine with me.
Yeah, and Kevin, I am putting on my mayor hat, which hardly ever comes off. I wouldn't want the variances going to planning and zoning because they don't have any control over the restrictions.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of an apple and an orange, and I would assume that when all of the property is purchased, they may, kind of to Bill's point, Cameron, they have the ability to be in charge of the deeds and restrictions, almost like a homeowners association. Is that right? Or am I not understanding that correctly?
That's correct. This isn't an HOA. These are merely restrictions that give the EDC board the sole authority to enforce and grant variance of them.
But I think
So-
you're right. It's HOA-like in terms of that type of control based on the owners. And we are
Correct.
the 50% owner right now, so we're driving the bus.
Correct. It's more right. It's more like we're the developer instead of an HOA. That's exactly right.
And so we would be the body, everybody who buys property, they understand they're buying under these restrictions. And if somebody wants a variance, we're the political body that they would come to.
Correct.
For now.
Well,
Well, we're the main owner.
51%, right?
Right.
Until somebody comes in and wants that lower 98 acres for a massive employment center, and then we'll handily give away our 51%.
There you go.
All right. We were on page 8, if I recall, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions on 8?
No, you're just changing the zoned industrial highlighted area. That's all, right?
Correct. To employment centers. And then on 9, we're including the site plans, just to make this more comprehensive and make it more, to make it more, because right now, if somebody wants to provide the board with what they were going to be providing for a site plan, it wasn't very clear. It insinuated that they were going to be providing a site plan, but it didn't come out and say a site plan. So that's why I went ahead and just put in there building setbacks, lot coverage, and site plans, and that they're going to be providing a site plan and then define what a site plan is to the board anytime they're going to develop. And that's going to be a part of any project as well. And then I removed a lot of the parking, the whole paragraph on parking, because cities, the B3 codes control parking. So, and those are more flexible than what we had in there for our restrictive covenants. So we want to be as more flexible with our industrial park for parking as possible. So why not use the new codes? That's what they're perfect for parking flexibility. So that's why we just made that simple and reference those for parking.
Yeah, I like that, doing that as much as we can.
Yes.
Cameron, one of the items, the longest one that you marked out, which I'm fine with, but just double checking, and it's like, it seems that the original BDC folks didn't want somebody buying a piece of property and subdividing it.
Correct.
And are we marking that out because we do not care?
So they have, if they are going to subdivide, they have to get permission from the EDC board. And there are some projects where we may want to subdivide or replat. And so we don't want to prohibit that in our park. And we're okay with it as long as the EDC board approves it in a site plan.
So, okay, so the site plan would show that they were divided. They have to do a site plan with plats showing lots that they were going to sell off.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll say this because we've actually had projects in the last 90 days talk about how they can phase different tracks, either expanding or contracting. And so it makes sense to be able to do that. And landscaping.
Yeah. On page 10, fifth line down, 3/4 of the way across, it says industrial park, comma, as a whole. It's missing the period and a double space. It was overzealous in the deleting.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so the site plan has to have all of that in there. And so I just took all that out because the definition now has all that. And it's required, landscaping is required under city code. Screening and fencing, I left the same. That all made sense to me to keep that in there. The bottom of 10. Anyone else? And then added site plan for page 11, continuing down. Does anybody have any questions or changes to page 11?
Cameron, and are you ever going to address building materials, exterior building materials?
I think that's further down.
Okay, I hadn't found it yet. I'll wait.
Okay, I think it's further down. So you'll see there the signs. That's why we deleted the definition of signs because of the city ordinance. And then I also added the site plan for outside storage because we may have different, especially these days with water retention, et cetera, different types of storage. Architects try to get creative in their designs. And so I wanted to have as much flexibility as possible for our industrial park. That was kind of my overall intent going into this was what do we need to tidy up legally and how can we be as flexible for companies as possible, but still maintain the integrity of our industrial park. Page 12. So we removed the livestock and poultry, and that's because there's a number of businesses looking because of our location to rural central Texas. There's a number of livestock companies and food processing companies from Opportunity Austin over the last 6 months that have been looking at Bastrop. And so I want to make sure our industrial park allows for these types of activities and doesn't become a hindrance should we land one of those types of companies.
Building materials, page 8, bottom of page 8 and the beginning of page 9.
So I missed
Yeah,
it.
it talks about the exterior building materials, right? Yeah.
Right. Area A was masonry, and then area B was related to structures and glass and.
Thank you.
Yep.
So this, Cameron, can you speak to the Airedale district? So this would remove that, correct? Because these are the deeds and restrictions that we would go by.
No, the Iredale district's a code, a law, so those trump what we have in here. But we can't override those. No.
Okay, so we still need to do some cleanup with that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That wasn't exactly how I understood it. On the poultry, going back, and I'm sorry thank you for letting me know where the building materials were. On the livestock and poultry, my only question is if I bought property and developed with these restrictions that it's not going to be there, and now we're going to add it. Have we talked to any of the existing business owners?
What do you say that we're going to add the poultry? We're taking the poultry out?
Well, what we had was that, and I may be misunderstanding, but I bought a piece of property and I bought it knowing that there could never be livestock next to me. If we remove this, it means now I bought a piece of property and there can be livestock next to me.
Correct.
Well, now, on that one issue, you're talking to people that maybe do a food processing plant or something along those lines, right?
Correct.
Okay, would those processing plants bring in actually live animals? Or are they going to bring in some amount of pre-processed, frozen as an example, or something that is not live?
We've met with companies with every option under the sun. Creative, different, some live animals, yes.
Okay. I guess then the fallback, so to speak, position to that was that it would still have to comply with the odorous matter and waste and things like that, because food processing plants are notorious for odors, waste, animal. We don't go, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into a food processing plant, especially cattle and any food processing plant of live animals. So we may have to address both of those issues, as well as the trash and the disposal of same. Obviously, it has to meet, you know, FDA approval and all that kind of stuff. But if we're going to allow, as the mayor said, if we're going to allow livestock, there's other things here that we're going to have to address as well, aren't we?
Yeah, and just so you know, I also have met with, you know, companies that were also in biomedical research that have animals too for research purposes, that wouldn't be stored there, but would be coming in and out of there as well.
I think that sort of thing, and I'm good, you know, it's some rat and mice and a rabbit in cages that are going into a medical unit. I think that's different than there's a cattle processing farm.
Yeah.
So what if we leave the provision in there as it was, and I make an addition to it saying that this provision does not apply to food processing or scientific research, and list various different areas of our target industries that it would not apply, and then subject to board approval on a project, because then it would get board approval of a project before it could come in. And then therefore we wouldn't have to amend our restrictions should a project come through the door that we want to approve. We wouldn't have to amend our restrictions if it says that in there.
Well, kind of going back to Bill's point earlier about keeping it the same, keeping it consistent, if what you're talking about is basically a variance to the covenants, to the restrictions, to allow something like that if we don't change it. However, if we get a project in that now talks about food processing, and we had not allowed it in the past, if we go about doing a variance, isn't that going to possibly affect other people that are already there, that came there with the knowledge that there's not going to be any livestock made available or processing plants? In other words, yeah, we could do a variance, but then aren't we, on the other hand, going against the kind of standards that we already set?
That's the definition of a variance. and that's why we'd have to do that on a case-by-case basis. And is that a project we would want a variance for these restrictions on? Is that a qualifying project? Or is that not what we want for a qualifying project? But to finish where I think I want to finish your thought and my thought on this subject is, if we do variances like this, those decisions are only applicable to that company. So therefore, if that company left, that variance goes away. And so that's the advantage of doing it that way.
No, I understand, and to me, it's preferable to keep what we have, and then on a variance on a subject by subject time, whatever variance may come up, we have that discussion. I'm just trying to address, we have some consistency, and either we are going to talk about allowing that kind of stuff and change it, or we don't change it at all, and we just have a variance whenever, should the project deem it, a better way to go by having
Well,
the variance.
the advantage of the variance is at that point, you know where it is. So are you going right into an existing business, or is it they're buying 100 acres and it's going to be in the back 20 acres and nobody abuts it? So that's, for me, that's one of the things about having the variance is you have a whole lot more information to make a decision on a case-by-case basis, as opposed to if I was an existing property owner hearing, oh, they've changed it and now there can be livestock is automatically approved for my next door neighbor, which is not what I understood when I bought the property. That was my.
Right. I think we're kind of saying the same thing here, is that, to me, it's better just to leave it like it is and approach the variance on a case-by-case basis than try to change it. And then we're really changing the whole, complexion of it, so to speak.
I think, Cameron, you're trying to add a little bit of information to it, so it's not like, sorry, livestock, we have no interest at all. You're trying to open the door of, like we were saying, if it's mice in a cage, that's a kind of a horse of a different color, so to speak.
That is correct. And so that's how I put that in there. I'll say if a company meets target industries A through F, list those out, and the board approves it as a qualifying project, then livestock may be stored, kept, processed in accordance with the terms of the BEDC approved project that is not in violation, otherwise in violation of these provisions.
That sounds reasonable to me.
Sounds very legal.
Mr. Washington, what do you think?
One of the things I was wondering, is that not a city ordinance on livestock and so on in the city as to whether you can have it within the city limits? And I think the industrial park, is it, and I'm talking a little bit without the knowledge, is it still in the city limits? So is there not an ordinance, a city ordinance on livestock and so on in the city?
There is, but we're an employment center, and so how we can do it is we get more flexibility because our whole industrial park's an employment center. I don't know how that would apply to like residential and the like. I know there are livestock restrictions in there for that.
Yeah, I know in the residential areas, it's, you can't, there's certain restrictions on livestock and animals of such. But I guess, have we done any researches to see why are we trying to attract those kind of businesses? I mean, what's the advantage of it for the city and for jobs and so on? Because it's, we are 30 miles from Austin, a center that's high tech and so on and so on. So and I don't want to rule out livestock and so on or research centers, but I like the idea of the variance in the sense that if we say that we leave it like it is now and say that anybody who wants to apply to come in, that would give us, the board, as a chance for them to tell us what they want to do. And as the mayor said, you're going to be, close to the line and so on, then we'll have a chance to look at it and say yes or no.
That's correct. And to answer your question about what they bring, I can talk about this one because it's long gone. It's a project that went somewhere else. So it was a biomedical research company, and what they wanted to bring was $5 to $10 million investment into a building and capital that would put that building on the tax roll. And then they wanted to employ immediately about a 6 to 10 employees with various certifications, roughly $40,000 to $55,000 a year. But then they also had other salary and sophistication of employees with doctorate degrees, research analysts, et cetera, that went from $160,000 on down to $65,000. And in total, about 25 employees, half of which we're going to relocate to our area. That's just a quick snapshot of that type of industry, and what that would provide just immediately in 12 months would be hundreds of thousands of dollars in immediate return to the city in tax revenue. And
it'll be more of a research. You know, when if you saw the headlines in the paper about some livestock company coming in or some company connected, first thing people will think is livestock on the ground. So if you're saying that that's going to be, we're basically a research company, and you know, we're not, as I think Ron was saying, is the smell and all that is not going to be an issue, because, and I think that would give us a chance as a board to rule on it if you went the variance way. And I'm not, you know, I know that there has to be some good jobs and so on into research livestock and so on, like with Texas A&M and all of those places. With poultry, you know, probably a little different, but I just think that it probably would be better, in my opinion, to leave it like it is, with the idea that we go the variance approach, in the sense that anybody who wants to come in, and if we could phrase it that way and put it in there as such, that we would be willing to take a look and see what is it you plan to do, and you know, and what's the advantages for the city.
Yeah.
And that's what your legal, that's what you read, correct, Cameron?
Correct.
Just put it in a way that had 5 or 6 sentences. I was going for one sentence. Just use
one sentence. That's what I put. And what this sentence does, to address Charles's concern, is what this sentence does is it provides those prospects a warm, fuzzy blanket that we're open to this idea. We just have to hear what you're bringing to the table first.
Yeah.
Right. Without that sentence in there, it looks like we're close to it completely, and I have to reinvent the wheel with my board or something.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to hear about all opportunities. We don't want
Right.
them to, well, we can't go there and talk to them because.
I would agree. I agree.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
I am too.
Cool. Good points. Good thoughts. Page 13. We're all pretty rudimentary. No changes there. Hold on, 14 on my end. Anything else?
I'm fine with it.
And then 15. This is where you start getting into HOA type of. Any other changes on 15 or 16?
No, those all look good.
What we'll do is I'll make those noted changes, and I'll send this out to all the property owners and let them know that we'll be voting on this at our November meeting. And if they have any concerns, they can come and tell us. And we'll send them the link and all that information as well. We'll have it in a letter.
Yeah, I think that's really smart.
Okay.
Are we also open to any ideas or improvements, not just concerns?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You bet.
Rather than say if they have any concerns, I would ask, you know, here's what we're proposing. Appreciate feedback. More so than just concerns.
Right.
Yes, we'll also add ideas.
Okay.
All right. Anything else on this one? Put it to bed? All right, bylaws.
So 3.3, consideration and discussion on the 10th amended bylaws of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you. Okay, so on the first page, I added something in here that I wanted us to talk about is term limits. And if that's something that we didn't talk about it at our retreat, it was something that I wanted to talk about, but for whatever reason I didn't until I got to my notes. And I'm going to send you guys all of my notes from our retreat as well after this meeting, so you can look at those as well as with my changes to tonight's versions. You'll have all of that. But that being said, I've always been a fan of term limits. I wanted to throw it out there to see if that's something you guys wanted to talk about for the board. Since we're a corporation, we're allowed to have it. We're allowed to have it in our bylaws, but we don't have to have it in our bylaws. So that's for you guys to decide. That's not my decision.
Can I ask you a question?
You bet.
Since those directors are appointed by a mayor and confirmed by council, isn't that going to override anything that you put in this on that topic? And because it seems like that's what got discussed the last time. Angela's nodding yes.
Yes, that's what I was going to say too. That's what I recall from last time we talked about term limits was anything we put here wouldn't matter because the mayor and council could override it.
That is correct. The charter trumps this.
So that limits my, and your mayors are limited to 6 years because they are 2 terms and out. And so I'm not, it's fine for it to be in here, but with the understanding that honestly, council can override it, I'm not sure. I just don't think it's a place to put a ton of time.
Yeah, I think I'll just delete it. I think I'll just delete that whole section, that whole sentence. So that would probably be the quickest discussion of these. And that gets to then the next section that I added, which I guess I contradicted myself. The positions shall be filled in accordance with the Bastrop City Charter in Section 2 below. So I referenced that the charter trumps all of this and they can be filled however they want, or the mayor can, and then council. All right. Qualifications, I didn't change any of your qualifications because that's also state law and charter, most of those. And I made it more clear that it's not city council that appoints these, it's the mayor that appoints that's subject to city council approval. And then at the bottom of page 2, in meeting of directors, well, let me finish that sentence. I added virtual meetings as well, which state law and the governor's order trumps that. And once the governor removes that order, then we have to go back to live. But I could easily see legislative session putting provisions that government bodies like ours can do virtual meetings without an emergency order. And if that's the case, we can do that in here. But this doesn't override state law should that occur. But it just gives us the ability to do that.
Okay.
And then the ethics policy. At our last meeting, we discussed at our retreat in February, so the public knows. At our retreat in February, we discussed this provision in our Section 3 of our bylaws on resignations that states any director who files for elected office other than that of mayor or city council shall automatically resign from the board, with the exception of elected officials then serving on the board and seeking re-election to the same, Such automatic resignation shall take effect upon the director filing an application for candidacy. At our meeting in February, we discussed that that is not very clear. It's not a good provision, and the ethics policy of the city already addresses this. So there is no reason for this to be in there with the ethics policy of the city already addressing conflicts of interest. So that's why I have that change in there for this.
Would it be helpful, since we're still discussing these, et cetera? I know that we can all go look it up. I didn't have time to go look up and read the Code of Ethics, but it would have been great to have had that as additional information to review. Yeah.
I have it as a PDF right here. I will email that with my notes from our retreat with these changes of these 3 documents. So I'll email all 5 of those to each of you.
That makes sense.
Thank you, Catherine. Good point. You didn't remember the Allen's 4-hour seminar? Come on. Everybody remembered every minute of that.
Thank goodness he didn't read the ethics ordinance to us, right?
No, it was much more entertaining than that, for sure. Any questions on page 2?
No.
What about page 3? I made some capital changes, and then for the absences, we can do it in any given way. We can do it revolving or in a given fiscal year. Since everything's appointed pretty much on the fiscal year, and we kind of operate on the fiscal year, I figured it made more sense to do it on the fiscal year. So I added that.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, it's easier to track fiscal than it is, 7 different rotating calendar dates.
Right.
Cool.
Well, and I don't know what other mayors are going to do, but because I make my appointments in the August, we do interviews in August, make the appointments in September, so they're effective on the fiscal of October 1st. As we're pulling information together, that's one of the things that we check, is just see if anybody's got absent. We do the double check of seeing if anybody has absenteeism problems.
And right now our board does not, by the way, so we're good. All right, page 3. I took out the gifts and just brought in the ethics policy as a whole. Gifts are very detailed and addressed in the ethics policy.
It's never good to try and rewrite the same policy in 2 documents. That's nothing but lawyer feed.
Right. And then that way, anytime the city changes the ethics policy, it's just adopted and changed with us.
It's perfect.
Yeah, consistency.
And then page 4, so I'm on page 5 if we don't have any changes on page 4. Or questions?
A lot of punctuation there. It's capital.
So I included I added another role for me in the bylaws, the periodic updates to city council for executive director.
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be in our bylaws.
Anyway.
What does periodic mean? Quarterly? You don't want to go back
Right
to
now, the
monthly?
city's doing quarterly, so that's what I'm doing. I didn't want to define it as quarterly. Should a new city manager come in and say, I want it twice a year or every month, then that's fine. So.
Cameron, I don't know if the officer place is the right place to do it, but I know in the rules and procedures, it talks about an executive committee. but we don't define an executive committee in our bylaws.
No, it's defined in our policies and procedures.
Okay,
That's correct.
I didn't get it.
But we can define it in our bylaws.
Well, if we've already got it in the policies and procedures, again, to Bill's point, there's no need in trying to pair them both up if we've already got it covered.
Yeah. Agreed. And I'll find it for you in there if you're looking for it, Mayor.
We're going there next.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay.
Do we
Okay,
need
so
to
this
say
is from
something
our-
about combining secretary and treasurer?
Yes, we have in our policies and procedures and our bylaws that one person can do both roles.
Except if it's a chair,
Pardon?
I think.
So on page 6,
Right there at the title of Article 4,
yes,
you get functional corporate duties and requirements removed, and CEO provides updates to council above.
correct.
Don't
So
know what removed relates to and the way the lining space is. I'm not clear what that is.
So what happened? Okay, so what we had in here was this whole program of work that at our retreat, the board is supposed to get a program of work together and present that periodically and or annually to city council. And that's not how we operate. The CEO director does all of that. And so we took out program of work and board, and we put in, my role is to update city council, and it's our role each year, as you'll see in the policies and procedures, to come up with our strategy and our plan for each fiscal year moving forward.
But
So
the
we took
title,
out-
the title removed and CEO provides updates just doesn't,
Oh,
doesn't-
He's just making it disappear.
that's not the title. I just put that in there for you to see that I removed and why I did that. The all caps
Okay.
are just why I did what I did or where that's referenced somewhere else. Sorry about that.
I just expect that to be highlighted or something, and then we say that this is out. So, okay, I'm much better now.
Yeah,
that's
it didn't
out.
really make any sense, did it?
No,
Explains-
I was scratching my head.
Okay.
And so on the audits and books, this was part of our retreat. The city already does that, so we just put the city can still continue to do that.
Okay.
Page 7. And so the only change is we have our own internal financial control policies, and then that's in our policies and procedures. Then in the policies and procedures, we break down what that is. And then in addition to that, we follow the city's financial policies and procedures in our policies and procedures. So that way it's not in our bylaws, it's in our policies and procedures. If that makes sense.
Okay.
And then just capitalizations on page 8. And then I included employees for the indemnification because the title had it, but the definition and the actual application of it did not for indemnification. So I wanted to make sure Angela was indemnified for her Facebook posts, as long as they're EDC related. So that's just the change there.
Okay.
And that's it. Any other questions?
Back on the qualifications, and I'm looking, it may already be in there. Do we say that they have the ability to be bonded?
You
So the
said
bonding-
yes, it's in there.
That's
It's
a
for the
great-
officers. Yes,
Only for officers, okay.
correct.
Well, wait a minute. I think it says directors, not officers.
Correct. It's directors.
E under section
There you go.
2 qualifications E.
So no. It's each director shall be capable of being bond. So that means should you needed to be bonded, you have to be capable. But as an EDC, we only bond those bonded officers who sign off on or have the authority to sign off on chair, treasurer,
Vice chair.
and
But
vice chair.
since those people come from the board, it's a good idea that everybody has the ability to be bonded if it's so deemed necessary. That was the point I was trying to, thank you for pointing that out. I just want to make sure it was in.
That's correct. They have to have the ability to be bonded in case they should become an officer. That is correct. And should the need arise that we need to bond the board, there could be a need for that to happen with if we were to do infrastructure bonds or something like that, and they require that as part of the contract. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, that wasn't so painful. Okay.
No, just 12 more teeth to go.
All right, any more comments on that one before we move to the policies and procedures? Point 4, consideration and discussion on the policies and procedures of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation.
All right, let me. Okay, so let me start off first by answering the mayor's questions and go to the executive committee.
I found it, it's on page 7.
Perfect.
How many policies are there?
What do you mean?
This is a 13-page document that starts over with 1 3 or 4 different times, which is why so much stuff is repeated. There's 4.
There's 4 different
And-
policies.
Oh, because there's the governance, then there's the meeting
Board meeting.
procedures, and then the
Travel.
financial,
Travel.
and then the travel.
Would this also be what you would refer to as, we've talked many times about an employee handbook?
Correct. This would be employee handbook would be part of this, because this is also
Yeah, it's also, it's in addition to, but it includes it, because we've always talked about not having that. Yeah.
correct. So any questions on the first page when we go through? So basically the first section, meetings, just says when we're going to set meetings and what the quorum's going to be, which
I
is
think there's a consistency issue where we need to look, and even in the first section, it says number one, the BEDC Board of Directors. At the end of the sentence, it refers to it as the Bastrop EDC. And then in the third section, at the end of it, it refers to the bylaws of the EDC. So we've got 3 different designations for who we are. I think somewhere we either define it as Bastrop EDC throughout all documents or BEDC through all documents. But I don't think bylaws of the EDC is acceptable.
Yeah, I'll do BEDC throughout.
Yeah, I think throughout the whole document, search and destroy or search and replace can be done.
Well, I think you can do the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation and then change
Right,
that
the
every time you
CDC.
refer to it as BEDC. So referred to as, yes. I think you can clean it up a lot there. So, as in meetings on number 1, we as a group decide when our meetings are going to be held. So this is a policy and procedure where we have some flexibility outside and above and beyond what's good for us as opposed to just what we're required to do under the city. So I'm getting down to the last one where I'd like to add a number 5 under agenda preparation. And this is the agenda to the board. And I'd like to set a time when we get the agenda to the board. We've talked about this over and over and over again, but we've been through multiple executive directors. And so on number 4, it's what the city requires us to do, which is to have it posted 72 hours. I'd like for the board to receive the agenda packet the Wednesday before the board. Is that something we could include in this, since we're actually doing that sort of flexibility? And when we pick our own regular meetings, this is kind of one of those flexible things where we'd like to have the agenda more in advance than the Friday 72 hours.
Agenda board packets. Provided to board on or before
That would be 5 days, I guess.
5 calendar days before.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I think we probably need some verbiage in there to account for.
Before any meeting, special or regular, before any meeting.
Well, but also some verbiage to allow for, contracts that are currently being negotiated, things like that, that get down to the wire prior to a meeting. There's going to be times where we're not going to want to wait a month to get something approved. So I don't know, is there, I wouldn't want to tie our own hands on something like that.
Well,
We can have some flexibility.
I put draft agenda packet because you're right. It can't be the final one because the final one is the one that's posted on Friday. And you're right. There's some, most times than not, stuff happens between Wednesday and Friday that's out of our control that we have to put in there.
However, we don't talk about contracts except in executive committee, and we only give a summary in the agenda of what we're going to talk about in executive committee. So even if we had a non-committed negotiation, it wouldn't make a difference, would it?
Well, it would be.
In other words, if we haven't finalized something, if we have it 5 days before and we haven't finalized something, we're still not going to talk about that publicly, right? We're going to talk about that during executive committee. And when we describe what takes place in executive committee in the agenda, it's only summarized, right? It's not complete, correct? Maybe complete's not the right word, but you know what I'm saying.
So what you're saying is we could get a packet with all of the information, even though a detailed contract we're not going to learn about anyway until we go to executive session.
That's what I'm trying to say, yes.
Yeah, that wouldn't go in that packet to us in advance anyway. That's not public information. until we discuss it.
Right.
Well, if it's a contract that comes up for a vet, it would be in there, right?
Right.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of contract it is. Like sometimes contracts for services, like we got an email Friday that a service that was expired and we needed to pay $3,000 for it and renew the contract. Well, if that was over 10,000 and we needed that, I would have to put that on the agenda Friday. That's a perfect example.
Right.
I think that's an exception. I think you can work that into the wording. I think the idea is to get them more in advance.
Yeah, I think if we just use the word draft, I think that probably does it, doesn't it?
But we
Yeah,
do
well,
have
in the last 11 months, we had 4 special meetings and 2 regular meetings, so 6 meetings. Like none of the information, I mean, it was all the COVID stuff. That was all coming in a lot. I know in the first round, the deadlines were that Friday. And just by the inherent nature of what was going on the last 7 months, that made it virtually impossible.
I think there was a comment that said having a draft sent out 5 days ahead of time. The draft documents 5 days ahead of time is valid. It's draft, but then right then you're going to post on the 72 hours. And what we need to do is make sure we have the same documents that's posted and the 72 hours in our hands additionally.
Well, you guys will always get the Friday final packet. Yes.
So to have a draft proposal on Wednesdays, I think okay, as long as it's fully considered as a draft. But we can only run our meeting and work off of what's on the 72-hour posting.
True. Kathy, what you want to say?
I just wanted to say you all do get everything before. I send out 3 emails whenever the packet is being posted. You guys get the first email that goes out. So you are getting the complete packet and everything first before anyone. And then we have some lists of people that get the packet and are made aware that it's on the website and everything, but you guys get everything first. You're never getting anything after it's out to the public. You get it first.
I wouldn't suggest that we certainly, I don't think we do. I mean, we could even look it up ourselves. But I think we want to get into more of a consistency of getting it more in advance. That's what I'm getting to. We can find an exception every single time, or we can push it to the limit every single time. But I think it would be beneficial if we had a draft agenda more in advance than that Friday.
One thing to keep in mind, however, there are times where we don't have the financials by Wednesday. So
we didn't have it for this meeting.
So putting the packet together and combining all the files and getting a draft to you guys, if we're missing a key piece, I just want you guys to be aware of that. We oftentimes don't have the capability of having a complete draft packet that early in the week. I just want to throw that out there.
And that could be a blank page space holder that says financial report pending, but still have it in there as a space holder or a pre-draft package if we need it. Yeah. That way it's not viewed as being missing, it's viewed as being known that it's not ready yet.
Oh, I would ask Catherine, what are you trying to accomplish by doing this?
Well, I think these 60 pages were a bit much for me on a very heavy schedule to take a look at in a short amount of time. And these are pretty meaty, even though a lot of it was just reading. Mm-hmm. I would, and I think we've gotten in a pattern of getting them late. And I think we could go back to the pattern of getting them a little bit earlier. I think it's beneficial. Maybe none of you look at it before Monday morning. I certainly looked at it on a Monday morning too. But I think if I had more flexibility and to look at it on a Wednesday afternoon or a Thursday morning or a Friday morning or a Saturday or a Sunday, I might be better prepared.
Well, I guess what I would throw out is that to me, it's like the 3 big topics we're going through. I don't do well going line by line with things. I do better if you give me the whole package with an executive summary as to what I should be looking at. Say Cameron would point out, here's what I think is significant in here, or here's what I think you ought to be looking at, or some changes I've made. So I would, I just don't do well going through a whole package line by line. And I've been spoiled. I agree. Having worked as an executive, we always got executive summaries. You didn't have to read the whole package. You read the executive summary, then you go back and look through. So some abbreviated way of doing that would be better to me and more time consuming, less time consuming than what we're doing now. Because now we're going down just like basically a staff person would do. Staff people would go through and go through the whole thing and point out anything that a lot of us have been talking about. Does that sound unusual? I'm just pointing out what I see. I'm sorry, but that's basically, so I think if you're saving, that's when I ask you, what are you trying to accomplish? If you say, look, I want everybody to be more prepared, or if you say, I want it to be less time consuming, I don't know what your goal is. Because if the goal is to be less time consuming, then to me, the executive summary would be the better way to go.
Well, I don't want to create extra work. I mean, you're going to have to put out the agenda in the packet anyway. So what if some things are missing? Maybe it's just my own personal preference that I'd like it a little bit more ahead of time. I'm certainly open to getting it late, sometime on Friday, and working the weekend, taking a look at it, if everybody feels that that's how they'd like to handle it as well.
I'd like to get them before Friday afternoon. And I know staff would probably like to get them out before Friday afternoon. So if we just say make every effort, I understand Mr. Washington saying, I want to read it on Wednesday with holes, and then I got to read it again on Friday. That's not really efficient if I'm having to go through the whole packet twice. Right. But getting it Friday afternoon, if you've got a busy weekend and a full Monday, it makes it really hard. And you can't plan ahead if you don't get it before. And haven't we tried? What was staff originally shooting for? Wasn't there a time before COVID that you guys were shooting for Thursday at noon anyway? Or am I not remembering that correctly?
We always try. I mean, we would love to get it out by Wednesday morning. I mean, that would. I don't like when we push up against the deadline of Friday afternoon. I just want to point out that Friday afternoon isn't late. We're required, Cameron, correct me if I'm wrong, of having this out 72 hours ahead of time. And it just because our meetings are on Monday, that puts us at Friday afternoon. But absolutely, if we can make it happen, Angela and I work tag team this to get this packet together. There is a lot that goes into it. It's not just pushing a button and making it happen. So if we could get it out by Wednesday, we would love to be able to do that for y'all. Absolutely. I wouldn't want us to Charles's point, is to put a packet together that's just a draft packet and then we're going to have to start over and do it again to get the packet that goes out to the public and goes out 72 hours before. So if we can, I mean, I don't know, Mayor, for city council meetings, there's a deadline of when things have to be in, and it's pretty early. It doesn't work like that for us a lot of the times. And, I don't know. I mean, I want you all to know that Angela and I get the packet out as soon as we possibly can and as soon as we possibly have everything that we have. So I guess I just wanted to mention those things, and I'll stop talking now.
Well, maybe we leave it the way it is, 72 hours. That's the policy. That's what we're required to do. And then put it maybe as a performance objective to see, can we move those up to a Thursday release or something in terms of just overall organizational and performance of the team.
And three things. One, that's why we're not voting on anything tonight. That's why this is all for discussion only. Two, I have not been late on anything. I disagree with that. I have not missed any deadlines. And I don't.
No, I didn't mean to say that you've been late. You had 72-hour deadline. It's just that we have previously requested that, and this is before your time possibly, we had previously requested getting them by the Wednesday. I don't know how many executive directors back it was that we experienced that. So anyway, I'm sorry I brought it up. If we can't, get it out early.
What was number 3?
Look at it. What's that?
Cameron, you said 3 things. What was number 3?
I got distracted. I'll think of it.
You meet the deadlines, you haven't been late, and then there was something else.
Oh, yeah. My computers haven't worked, but like half the time in the last 10 months. And that's caused so many problems across the board. So literally, until the last 30 days, I have yet to go three days in a row without a complete shutdown of my computer. So
have you thrown that one away yet? Can you get another one?
I have new ones. Yes, I do.
I think that happened once and I'd be tossing. I'd break it because I'd be so mad. All right, well, maybe we'll see some materials ahead of time. Maybe I'm the only one that maybe needs to take a look at them. I do appreciate the fact that Cameron always gives me a call. This one was a little overwhelming for me. Maybe it's just because I have work I'm doing right now. They're all overwhelming. So, all right, let's continue.
All right. Where are we, on page 2?
Wait, sorry, before we leave page 1, it's at the end of meetings, it said it shall be the secretary and or assistant secretary's responsibility to monitor and report attendance. I don't think that's the secretary of the board. We don't have an assistant secretary. I think it's staff, and it needs to say staff.
Yeah, you're right, staff. You're right. Kathy does do that.
Yeah, she documents it.
Yes.
Cameron, you want me to bring you up to speed on that?
I got it.
Okay. That's something that fell through the cracks between directors.
So maybe it's staff and honestly, it should be the staff should report it to the executive director, and the executive director should bring it to the attention of the mayor or council, because we're the ones that remove somebody for absences.
Got it.
Right. And it used to be the executive director and okay. It's changed a few times.
And you said the executive committee is defined, and I found it on page 7, but that'll be page 7 of the second of 4 policies. I don't see it defined in these first 5 pages, which is this policy. And maybe it doesn't need to.
The what? It's on the, you're talking about, it's on the governing corporate governance.
Yeah.
Okay. So that'll be the first one.
Right. It's under corporate governance. It's page 7 of the total.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's a different policy. So do each of the policies need to be able to stand alone? That's my point.
No, these are collectively the policies.
Okay.
I guess I could title that better.
Well, or you could, make it like a book. You've got 4 chapters. You've got 4 different policies underneath the policies and procedures.
The Bastrop EDC policy and procedures, and then board meeting is one of those, and travel is another one, and governance is another one. I think if you flip those, you'd have a little better clarity of them being collective.
Yes, sir. That's a good point. I'll make this more outline flow. Yes, I agree.
So as we did in previous, we referred to things that were already being used by city code or what have you. So the meeting decorum and the public addressing of the board, and a lot of this is verbatim from the city ordinances, correct? So is
No.
there a place where you just want to refer to?
No, it's not verbatim. We can set our own rules for decorum, and city council can set their own rules for decorum. And this is our rules for decorum, for the meeting decorum and the public meeting and addressing.
And how
Cameron, I think the city's policies and procedures is over all of our boards. I think it's written that way. It's over boards and commissions.
The charter says that?
The
Or the
policies and procedures.
I need to look into that. Let me look into that. Let me highlight this.
Okay, when we get to page 3, I have a question. Are we finished with page 2?
I am. I'm trying to, I know there are some things down here that I'm just saying, I'm not really picking out all the different things that are different from the city, but I think you'll look into that just to see which one overrides.
Yeah, I'll go through all that.
Go ahead, Ron.
On page 3, under number 2, agenda item comments, in subsection B, I think we've got the corky dots out of order here. You say, generally, once the agenda item is called for consideration by the chair, the following sequences shall occur: the presentation of the agenda item by EDC staff or the requester, board questions and answers related to the presentation, public comments on the item, and then board consideration of action. But it's under the board consideration of action related to the agenda, motion second, then debate and vote. No, I believe that's out of order. We're going to have a debate on it, right? And then we're going to vote on it?
No, it's a motion. Robert's rules, it's a motion and second, then you open it up for debate, and then you close and then vote.
Well, okay.
The discussion, you're thinking of the discussion, which is before and 2 up above, and then public comments.
Perhaps I am. All right.
I always thought we took the public comments before we talked about it. Is that not correct?
Well, I was going to bring that up also. It's like, okay, if we always start out, we always have we don't go through a motion every time we're going to go from one section to the next section of the agenda, right? We open the meeting and we talk about the 3.1, 4.1, so on and so forth. We don't have a motion to talk about every point. Yet, it would appear that we have to have a motion and a second before we can even debate it. I'm just
That's just for action.
I'm sorry, say again?
That is correct.
Right. That is right for Robert's Rules of Order. You have to have a motion and a second in order to open it up for debate. Now, you've talked about it in discussion prior to the motion, but the actual debate as to where I'm for it, I'm against it, whatever, is after a motion is made.
All right,
second.
so I got it. And so under discussion is what I'm talking about. What you're talking about is once we've already had the discussion, should there be further debate on it, yes or no? That's what you're talking about under the Rogers rules.
Technically, you're not supposed to be having a discussion. You're supposed to be gathering information. You're getting information from the public, information from staff. You're asking if you've got any clarifications. Cameron has Robin looked at it. That you're gathering information. The debate is when somebody says, I want to approve it or I don't want to approve it. Then that's when you have a debate about, but you have to have a motion and a second before you can have that debate.
I guess I was looking at debate more as a discussion instead of it being called a debate. So, all right. Very good.
Okay, page 4, anything? And page 5. And we're going to chapter 2 for governance. Did you use anybody else's policies and procedures to go through this, or did you have something that you were looking at or anything, or you just knew these were the things you needed to address and get in there? Have you ever looked at anybody else as a question that you compared? What should they be there and shouldn't be there?
Yeah, these were sent to us by our attorney.
Actually, no, we've had these for a couple of years. Kathy can correct me, but this was back under Sean. I remember it because we had a difficult board meeting, and that's why we put them in place. And they weren't done all at the same time, which is why they don't flow. Now we're trying to put them all together into one document. So we've had these for a while.
Okay. So, because the version I have and I sent to you guys is the one from CEZ that we sent to Charlie after our retreat. So that's where I was coming from with that statement. But I agree globally that I want to take all these and redo these and order them and make it flow a little better.
So what page are we on?
Well, I'm taking a look at the first page of governance, which is 6 in my runoff copies. Sometimes I see my numbers are a little bit different, but the beginning of the governance.
So Cameron, on the appointments, it needs to reflect more like the first one because it says that they're appointed by the governing body and they're not. They're back to the appointed by the mayor and confirmed by council.
Right, that's the governing body. Under the Texas Local Government Code 501, the governing body is city council. And that process, that we don't want to define it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, Cameron, if you're looking at this again and putting it all together and coming up with things, I think one of the parts too is roles and responsibilities of some of these. like director of the board shall sign a conflict of interest statement upon appointment to the board. You know, when you see these things, my question is, you know, who's responsible for doing that? Who maintains the document? Where are the copies? And again, from a quality standpoint, how long do you keep those documents and when are those documents purged? More of an ISO 9000 type approach to a quality system. But otherwise, you're going to have this statement here, and then someone's got to be looking for these, and I don't even know who has them or where they would come from. Does the mayor keep them? Do you keep them? Does somebody else? Just to make sure we have closure on some of these things that actually pop up.
Yeah, and that gets to a records retention
Yep.
and software policy. We need a software policy too.
Yeah, records quality, records retention, which includes what's important, what's the age of it, after 7 years or whatever, that such documents are disposed of or cleared.
Yep. And software usage and proprietary information policy as well.
Yep.
And software and device, I don't know, cell phones, computers, so forth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
What page are we on or moving towards?
Well, I'm looking at 7.
Okay.
I'm looking at 8. So the staff and the personnel policies, except were preempted by these policies and procedures. Can you give us an example where there is a difference?
What page?
So I'm on page 8 under, on number 5, which is under EDC operations and staffing. I'm looking to see.
That's
what
page
that
7.
would be.
That's page 7.
Yeah, so
Okay. Before the holidays and the working operating hours. Right
yes,
before
what
that.
about it? What was your question? Sorry, I was trying to find it.
So the EDC staff shall be subject to personnel policies of the city of Bastrop, except where preempted by these policies and procedures or other written. So is there an example in here somewhere where it goes off the ranch here, where there are something different?
Yes, both in I mean, none of it's contained in the city's policies and procedures. So I'm trying to figure out what. That's why we have in there. If it's not in here, then the city's covers it. Is that?
I think our travel policy is a little bit different, Catherine, to answer your question.
What's that?
I think our travel policy is a little bit different, a little less restrictive, I think.
Yeah,
Since
well,
we're
that's
gonna-
under travel. I mean, that's under travel. I just didn't know if there was something else that we wanted to make sure they didn't have to do that the city was having to do.
Yeah, I'll give an example I can think of is, and this gets a little bit tricky, but like the city manager can call a meeting and it can be a mandatory employee meeting. Well, they're not employees of the city, they're employees of BEDC. So Cameron has control over his staff. Someone else can't intervene with his staff. I guess is the way I would say it. Right, Cameron? You want to be able to.
That's correct. That's right. That's right. Paul can't dictate what my staff does, and I can't dictate what Paul's staff does as city manager. Correct.
Okay.
That's why we have our own policies and procedures. And that's why we're allowed to under the law, because we're our own development corporation. We're our own entity. So it's makes more sense for us to have our own policies and procedures because we operate differently under the law than the city. We overlap in some ways, but in a lot of ways we don't.
So to my point earlier, we'll double check that because it's written that it's over all of the boards, and you may, to Catherine's point, it may be some of the stuff like the decorum of the meetings and some of that stuff. It may be easier to just reference that and then specify the things that are different. May keep you from having to have a longer document if there's stuff that is applicable to both things, like streaming meetings. One of the things in there you had was like people are allowed to record, and in the city's policies and procedures, yes, you can record the meeting, but you can't disrupt the meeting. And you can be given a designated place where they can't set up the camera in front of the podium kind of thing. So there may be some stuff that's easier for you and it would keep you from having to rewrite it, and you could reference it.
Cool.
And I would suggest that on the holidays, since they're doing your payroll, you may want to just say the holidays adopted by council.
So
Maybe
the
not.
problem with their holidays is they're closed on like the city has all these the Texas and Independence Day days that we need to be open because we have site visits and companies wanting to come. So I actually told us to be open 2 days the city was closed. So we have our holidays slightly different to take those away and add those in. To include, we basically included Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve instead of Texas Independence Day and one of the other ones, Veterans Day, because that's in the middle of the week. Like I already have meetings and site visits scheduled on Veterans Day, so that makes no sense for us to be closed.
Okay, that's fine. Understand. You don't give them the Friday after Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we're closed that day. The city's closed too.
Oh, Black Friday. That's what I wasn't used to it being called that way. Sorry.
We're an economic development corporation, so I wanted to use the economic term.
Just one question on, trying to look at what's out there in industry and, typical on vacations. One of them is that you're able to reduce a couple of the defined days and provide them as free floating holidays for your own choice, whether it's ethnic, religion, and so forth. So if you want Thai Songkran Buddhist Festival, you would be able to take that if that's your preference. And then you would remove things like Martin Luther King, George Washington's birthday, Columbus Day, or some of the others, and then allow free choice of people according to their beliefs and preferences. I don't know if that's allowed or if that's in interest, because what we're talking about here is vacation days. But I think what Cameron, you talked about was business days that you were in operation. And I think those are two different things. If you choose to be open on Veterans Day, that's a choice to be open. But if I'm a veteran and I choose that to be my vacation day, maybe I have a selection to be able to take Veterans Day for my own preference. Again, it's an open question. It's a change of concept, but just want to put it out there for discussion.
So basically changing the
up
term vacation. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
I'll look up some of those types of flexible plans, and I'll see which one I think looks the best, and I'll put that in here for you guys to consider at the next meeting. I like that idea.
I don't know what that is.
These vacation days, I consider them holiday days.
Correct, and that's what we call them floating holidays, which allows an individual to take them according to their personal preferences. 2 of them or 3 of them in this case, and then the others are clearly defined. But then if that conflicts with your operational days, you have to have another restriction that says no more than 1 person can be out. If you've got a group of 3, if the office is still open on that floating day, 1 person can take it during these periods of time.
Well, I guess if everybody took that day off, then that would just be that holiday that day.
Could be.
Just hang a sign at the front.
Don't know how that affects the city and mayor's point of view, repercussions or so forth.
It's not that this part of it that actually wouldn't be a big deal. I've already talked to finance and handling this, and that's not a big deal. And the flexible days, I'll look at and see what languages are out there and put that in there. I like being progressive about stuff like that. Thank you, Bill.
My second comment on this page, sorry, somebody else?
No, go ahead.
Item 3 at the bottom, when it refers to, and it's going to show up in more of the pages, this and/or. When it's in a policy or procedure, I never like to see and/or unless it truly is, because it means it's a choice between the person. Either I can choose to get the answer or not. So it's almost like a child going to mom, don't like the answer from mom, go to dad. If dad says yes, then you've got the or covered.
Yeah.
So the EDC shall operate normal business hours unless there's emergency and or otherwise approved by. So the first and or is valid by the executive director, chair, and or treasurer. Honestly, that would be or treasurer. There would not be an and, because
That's
that means
correct.
I can shop around as a worker and choose who I want. If I don't get the right answer, I'll just go down the line until I get the right answer.
Well, hold on. Let me explain why that's in there. First of all, the or is changed, but the reason why is because we don't always have an executive director, and we don't always have a treasurer, or we don't always have a chair. So we have to have those ors in there.
The ors are good, but the and or is not.
Right.
The and or cannot be there. And then you'll see that in the travel policy, there's different approvals that keep saying and or, and it's general mistake in policies, because then again, you just keep shopping until you find the person who gives you the right answer and say, oh yeah, the chair didn't approve it, but I got the treasurer, therefore it's approved and I can do it. So please look through all uses of and or and make sure it's clearly and or in terms of items, but definitely cannot be and or related to approval. It's generally.
I feel like that's the voice of experience talking.
Yeah, in Spanish we call it con dolor aprendemos, which means with pain we learn.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Financial. I think this was one of the best additions because we've had some, I think, situations where, Sam goes back and reviews things and there was no policy, really to say, well, I don't think that you should have taken your car as opposed to a rental if it was cheaper or vice versa, that sort of thing. So I'm really glad to see that this piece has been built out. Any questions on page 9? Anything on page 10? Travel? You all aren't traveling, right, Cameron, right now?
Not right now, no.
Anything of concern on the last 2 pages?
Cameron, on the entertainment related marketing expenses, I know you're going to take the and/or and it's going to be or. I know you'll already take care of that. But when they're giving this approval, is it email? Is it a form? Is it how do you know you've given the approval and it's documented that it's done in advance if somebody tries to say that we followed it or we didn't follow it?
Yeah, well, in writing's good.
We might want to clarify that just a little because it'll be, it'll be the one-off. We won't ever come back and look at these until there's a problem. And then
Right.
we'll want to know that we've consistently done it.
That's true. Yep.
Mayor?
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I know, there have been, it's very rare, but if just, for example, if someone is out of town and they take someone out to dinner and that person orders a drink and it's on the receipt, there's not time to get written approval from somebody that that's okay. So what we've done in the past is on the receipt where that drink is, where that alcoholic beverage is have whoever is the director at the time initial by it, just sign off on it so that when Sam looks at travel expenses, he knows that, Cameron has seen it, just to try and cover ourselves. That's how we've handled it in the past. It doesn't come up hardly ever, but it's not something that if it does show up that we ignore. We do, try and,
I'm just suggesting that you write section 9 the way you're doing it to protect yourself and that you consistently follow it to protect yourself in the future. I don't really care how it's done, but that what you just described is not what it says in paragraph 9.
Say what you do what you say. Yeah.
Bingo. Don't put yourself in a corner you can't get out of. Because then somebody will come by and go, well, that's not how you've ever done it before. Why are you now saying I had to have pre-approval this time? So exactly what Bill said. Say what you do what you say.
I have one additional question on item 3, approval. Is the intention of the approval of the travel expenditure to have a 4I principle on its review? So is it reconciled and reviewed by the chair and the treasurer?
No, it's one of the two. That's an or thing again. I'm changing all those.
I'm just asking, do we want to is there any reason to have a 4I principle at that point where the approval and the travel reconciliations are also done by the one who's giving the authorizations? I'm okay with it. Is it, if the approval is within guidelines. I just want to make sure we just don't default to or if we really did mean and wanted a 4I principle on the reviews. That's all.
Well, right now, the treasurer is the one that does the reviewing of all those. So right now it's 2 eyes, myself and the treasurer. I mean, there's 4. I review everything as well.
But that doesn't say that because it says the chair and the treasurer does.
Right.
So would that then be
No, I don't look at any of them.
the director and the director and either the chair and or treasurer? Approval of expenditures. So there's 2 people approving the expenditures. You, Cameron, and then the treasurer.
Yeah, I think this is for board, so that way the board has oversight, not just me, the director, was the intent with that.
Okay. Because the other side is we don't want to just turn around and say it's, whatever paper is, that's just jumped at the treasurer. So.
Yeah, I think the chair or the treasurer is how it should read.
He should be the
I could
director.
do the chair as designate.
I'm okay with the treasurer,
All right.
but I'm just saying the director and the treasurer / chair, would review it. Then you've got your review of Cameron before they go out, and at least that would stop first level of issues to get through. And then the treasurer would be the approver, and in case the treasurer's not there, then the chair could do it.
Yep, I agree.
And then we just got 4 eyes on these things, because this is where the disasters happen.
That's exactly right. Yep. So I have executive director and treasurer. Bingo.
Yes.
Okay, anything else? We did get through them all. So you're gonna make some revisions, get them back out, and we'll do the vote in November. Is that how we're gonna handle this?
Yeah, no action. We're just gonna continue discussion. We'll have on the agenda possible action in November, but we don't have to take action in November. We can take action at our next meeting after that as well.
Okay.
Cameron, I really appreciate you cleaning them up, because this is painful, but the night that we have to pull them out, we'll be really glad that they've been written well and they're consistent, and and hopefully that night never comes, but when it does, it's really important stuff. So thank you very much. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, you bet. You're welcome.
No, we've operated a long time without them, and it's kind of negligent not to have them, so it's important. All right, so I think that's a wrap. I do want to bring one thing up, and maybe Mayor Schrader can address this. Everybody got in the mail the annual boards and commissions banquet. Always very nice to be appreciated for the work that you do. I do have a question, however. Is it 4 people to a table, or how are you addressing a room for more than 50 people? Or maybe explain that. Maybe someone else out there is listening on another board and has the same question about how the night will be managed.
Thank you so much for asking. Yes, there is 4 people to a table. You'll be seated by boards. We'll be seated near each other. We will not be doing bring the board up on the stage. So if anybody's giving an award, it will be at the table, and they'll be giving it there to minimize. They're taking extra precautions with the food to make sure that that's all done in accordance, and that somebody will take your temperature when you come in. So yes, we submitted a safety protocol for the dinner. So far, 21 people have responded in RSVPs, and of the 21 responses, 14 were yes. Of the 14 yeses, 2 of them are requesting virtual participation. So that's where and the deadline is another, I think, 10 days. But
Does that mean you deliver their dinner to their house? Does that mean you deliver their dinner to their house?
Yeah. No, that means you get to virtually enjoy the dinner as other people are eating.
You're a hungry man.
Okay. Just whether that's clarifying question. At this time, if there are no other announcements or comments, this has been a pretty long meeting. Appreciate everybody hanging in there and going over these. As painful as it is sometimes to do the unfun part, we like to do the fun part where we're looking at economic development. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll move that we adjourn the meeting.
I want to debate.
Okay, hey, Cameron, go ahead.
I'll
You'll be
second,
alone.
second the motion.
All right, the meeting is adjourned. The time is 7:20. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Great work,
guys.
Cameron.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.